Hi, I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTraining.tv, where we create great on-demand video training as well as live streams. Today is on WebDirect, right? We've been talking about WebDirect. In fact, some interesting things have come up because I'm shooting the Go course and I keep overlapping back to WebDirect. The Go course, we're just gonna make it official that we're adding kind of the WebDirect parts of it to the Go course because it's almost no extra effort. There'll be some videos that are specific to WebDirect, some that are specific to Go, and a bunch of them that overlap. So that will be if you get the paid training, then you will get that. WebDirect, let's talk about WebDirect with everyone. So I want to point out the FileMaker developer guide here. Once again, we have this documentation. Claris, for whatever reason, has the support department does their own documentation, and then the marketing and sales department does their own documentation, which is lighter and fluffier. So really, if you want in the weeds details, you go to the support department, get their documentation. This comes from there. This really should be a PDF, but they're doing it kind of as a wiki kind of thing. And we're going to go through some important things here. This is FileMaker Go, but what I want is the FileMaker WebDirect. This is from the support department. It says support up here at Claris. This is all the documentation for 19. I mean, that's like a lot of guides and stuff. Some are PDFs, some of them are not. I think I'm going to go to the WebDirect guide. This is the one that you really want. So we want to talk about the WebDirect guide. These, once again, used to be PDFs. Now they're like a wiki format. I don't particularly care because you can say show all and then kick it out and save it as a PDF, which is what I prefer to take with me. So I have like an offline copy of it. But WebDirect is important. We talked about this yesterday. We talked about the beginnings of understanding WebDirect, understanding what it can do for you, the fact that it's really a third client. Some people really love it. Some people, for most of us, I think even Dave would tell you this, it doesn't really have all the features of Go. It's not a replacement for Go. It's not a replacement for Pro. Basically, it was engineered and created to provide Android access for users of FileMaker. But being that Apple is Apple and we don't like to formally endorse or support Android products, then that was kind of a workaround. It solved a couple problems. One, it gave you browser level access, which they always wanted. Two, it solved the Android, we don't support Android thing from Apple, right? Very important. And so it's a pretty interesting tool. And it does, I would say, a pretty good job. I think one of you yesterday said, well, it's kind of a fallback position. If Go can't get you there, Pro can't get you there, WebDirect might be the tool for you. There's no pricing difference change in the product. Once again, when you get into WebDirect, the days I get these calls once in a while still, I say, hey, can you give me a quote? And I go, what do you need a quote for? And I'm looking at Dave over here. So I need a server and 2 copies, a copy of Go, and then a cloud 2 while we're at it, right? And it doesn't work that way. All you have to do is count up the number of people you have in your organization, right? And when you count those up in your organization, it's like 5, 10, 15, starts at 5, and then whatever increment above 5 you want, right? 6, 10, 12. And you're going to pay a price for that per month, right? If I cover that real quick, I know this is low-hanging fruit for some of you, but I want to make sure that we cover all the basics here. If I go to claris.com, I go to pricing over here. They have this level right here, which is basically limited to 5 or 10 users, pretty basic. They have a Claris, they have a $39. This is kind of the price that kind of gets people kind of aggravated a little bit. There is a tier in the middle. If you're an existing FileMaker user and you want to upgrade, which is most of the people that are running around here, there's this middle tier pricing of $25 per user per month. That's an exceptionally, in my opinion, a good price. You don't see it on here because I think Claris kind of wants to limit and control that, who gets that. But I think that really would be, at least for the developers to go out there and push that, because this is really, when you start talking big numbers, I had a customer come back to me and they had like 60 or 70, and they had their own IT guys. And so they had their own IT guys that were technically competent. And they're like, well, we really don't want the IT guys to have to deal with this. We just want to buy this, right? And they were looking at the $39 price point. And I said, but our IT guys can do it. And then all the IT guys can save so much money, they can all go to Hawaii for a week. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, if you look at the pricing at that level. So when you start talking about per user per month, and you're talking about hundreds of people, yeah, so the issue is that if you can get the $25 per user per month, it's a good price plan to be in. This is good if you have small groups. I mean, really, cloud is fine. here's the issue with cloud and or the cloud pricing, and I'll explain this to you real quick. If you have technical people, if you have IT people, and a very big and, they're cooperative. If they're cooperative and they will help you build a server and they don't ignore you when you call them, because you know what I'm talking about. A bunch of you here is that if you have an IT person that's cooperative, then you can get them to set up the server for you. You can run your own server. You don't need to use cloud. But cloud is really there for people who don't have IT people. They don't have reliable IT people. And then what it does, it gives you basically Claris on a theoretical 24/7 support structure, right? And so if you go down, you can call them and they will, if the server is down or something like that happens, they will help you with that. So what I want to do is I want to go into FileMaker Pro here. I'm going to go to recents. I'm going to open up a copy of Starting Point that's running on a server. It doesn't matter where the server is, but in order to do WebDirect, you have to have a server. When I say server, it's FileMaker Server, Mac or Windows or Linux eventually when we trust it, and then or Cloud 1 or Cloud 2. You have to have a server because it is a web page. So if I go over here to the browser, I go a new window in my browser, I can go to the domain for my server, which is this our test server right here, and I'm going to say FMI. So this is the link right here. I'm going to zoom in on this. This is one of those, and it's frequently case sensitive, so you need to be really careful about this. WebD. See that right there? So those of you, so this the part up here at the front will change for your server. This part back here is how you get to the home, basically the home page for the web browser. So when you pop into this, you're going to get these files here are being hosted. Once again, it says Claris WebDirect. This is 19 in this case. I'm going to click on this right here. It's going to ask me for a username and password. I'm going to log in, and then we start to see FM Starting Point. So FM Starting Point is basically an enterprise grade, since Claris is now on the kick of calling themselves enterprise, is basically the only free enterprise grade CRM on the platform. I'm sure there are other CRMs that are on the platform, but I can tell you because Nick Hunter worked at Claris for 6 years. He's a design expert. He's a lean design expert. He's been through this product. This product is as fast as that can be made. You can't really make a CRM that goes faster than Starting Point. And we are going to be showing that and proving that with a replicated server deployment with the help of 360works. Once again, Claris is saying they want to be enterprise. We're going to help them be enterprise with replicated servers worldwide. Very cool broadcast that's coming up. So let me move myself over here a little bit so you can see me hiding out down here. So this is the interface for it once again. And there are different variations of this interface, but this is the WebDirect right here. Once again, it matches very closely over here. Little differences, like for example, Nick worked out this hack with the rounding of a photo. It's definitely a hack, definitely a hack. We always talk about Nick's hacks. That's definitely a hack and then some. Let's talk about the development guide here a little bit. So what the development guide in here goes through, the parts you have to really pay attention to in this document. So we talked about yesterday about security. You have to turn the security on. I'm going to go ahead and hide my other icons here so that makes your life a little simple. For WebDirect to work, you have to turn on extended privileges, right? So I'm going to put myself down here. You have to turn on the extended privileges. I'm going to cover that briefly here real quick. Once again, to build applications on the FileMaker platform, you have to use Pro. To consume them, you can use Pro, Mac or Windows, or you can use Go or WebDirect. So Go and WebDirect are exclusively consumption clients. They're pretty cool. So anyway, if I go to File over here, I'm going to go down to Manage over to Security, and I'm going to go to where I have the admin right here, then I have Charles, I have Tom, and I have LiveStream right here. If I go to the advanced settings, right, I can come over here. I can see that that privilege set is the data entry only. I can click over here. And once again, I'm not so concerned about these items up here. This is part of a security conversation. But to get WebDirect to work, you really need to turn this one checkbox on right here. It will not work for that credential if this is not on. So this is extended privilege set. I'm going to zoom in over here real quick so you can see this. Once again, we talked about this at length yesterday. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But that is FM app. That is applicable for Pro and Go. It doesn't say Pro or Go. It says FM app. Once again, that's a certification test question they like to hit you with. This over here is FileMaker WebDirect, and that gives you access to that client. So this covers the 2 clients, and then this is your 3rd client right there. Okay. So we're going to turn that on. What I want to show you is here is this is a This right here is not a laptop, this is a Chromebook. And Chromebook, this is basically an Android device with a hinged keyboard and a screen, right? So pretty amazing. So I'm not the biggest Chromebook fan, mostly because they make them so cheap that the parts are kind of cheesy. I always get the 4 gigabyte RAM model. I think that's what it is, 4 gigs of RAM. They have 2s and 4s. Maybe they make it in 6s these days, but this was a 4 from last year. And I can come over here. I'm going to click on FM starting point right here. And it's going to say, hey, what's the password? And I'm going to go in there. I'm going to sign in with the password. I had it saved automatically. So now you can't really see this. Maybe you can see it there. There you go. See it like that? There it is. So it works. So the window that you have on Safari is the same as you have on here. So it's the glare of the lights, right? So I guess you could turn this. Can you turn this one off? Does that help a little bit? Or anyway, so this allows you to get in here. It works pretty well, right? And in fact, with 19, we get the support for card style windows, which is really nice. So those will pop up. They look really nice. So, and then also additionally with the calendar. So we have a calendar that's built in. This goes back to the conversation we've talked about, the DevCon, the keynote last year, when Robert Halsey showed the calendar. That was our product, right? We were shipping that. We still ship it. It's built into the CRM already. And it's a calendar from Full Calendar IO. It's a web-based calendar. So if I go over here to the calendar somewhere, where is that at? Let me see if I click on there. Where's the calendar at? Oh, hello. Do I have to hit escape? Let's see. Calendar. I guess we're hiding it. Oh, there it is. We always I thought we put a persistent button there. Let's see if this will work on here. Hopefully this works. Oh, yep, there goes the calendar, right? So you can't really see that too well, but the calendar pops up. So anyway, that's on a Chromebook. And this is like a $200, piece of junk computer, but for browser level access, it seems to work just fine. So that's pretty slick. I like that quite a bit. So he's asking about pricing, okay? So here's how this works. Dave, you go to sleep in here. I am going to put the camera on you. So if you look over here, I've logged onto my FileMaker 19 server. So we have one logged in pro connection. Once again, we gave you folks the connections this yesterday. We actually let you log in. If you remember that, you still have it. So say, for example, that I buy a 5-pack, right? I buy 5 total connections. Claris doesn't care what clients you use at all. They don't care. They have no, I would say, blanks to give, right? That's the common term you see these days on the internet. They don't care. If you pay for 5 people at $25 a month or whatever that price works out to be, they don't care whether you use Pro, Go, or WebDirect. So WebDirect can work equally well on the Chromebook. It works on an Android phone. It works on a regular phone. If you have an iPad and you want to use WebDirect as opposed to Go, there's no price difference. If you have people on Macs or Windows and they want to use WebDirect as opposed to Pro, there's no price difference. So the pricing is purely hardware at that point. So let's talk about differences. As you're building with FileMaker Pro, what are the main differences that you have to think about with WebDirect? One is that a really important concept is that every time you do something in WebDirect, the server has to do it for you. With Pro or Go, the database engine, the Draco engine, we've talked about the engine. For those of you who know our training, go to our training, find the videos that talks about the 3 engines, etc. And what ends up happening is that we will, when you type into WebDirect, you end up sending the information back to the server. The local client WebDirect doesn't do anything for you, Dave, right? It doesn't actually run a trigger for you or does almost nothing. Everything has to be done on the server, which could be good, but it's also bad. It puts more of a tax on your server. If you have, say you have 10 WebDirect users, they're going to torture that server much more so than 10 Pro or Go users. You can pretty much almost double or triple the number of Pro or Go users as opposed to WebDirect. I would say it depends on the solution, but we did a webinar where we tried to melt down the server, overload the server with starting point with 15 million records. We couldn't do it with Pro or Go. It took WebDirect, and then it took about half the people trying to do sorts at the same time, and the sorts went to the server to run. So then you had 50 or 80 people doing sorts at the same time from WebDirect, which is actually occurring on the server, and then the performance crashed. But we had to deliberately go out of our way to break it. So it's really hard. It's really good technology. Starting Point makes it work really well, and the technology generally works pretty well. Once again, supported browsers are Chrome, mobile Chrome, I guess you'd call it that, Safari, mobile Safari, Edge on Microsoft. This broadcast is sponsored by FMTraining.tv, where you can get the greatest in on-demand FileMaker training for an awesome price. Visit FMTraining.tv and check out the bundle button. You have 2 choices of bundles. So the training bundles are available here and here as well, which is interesting. So you can check out these if you're looking for our training. If you go to video, in fact, when you do our training, download the training. Okay, so the training with TK55678 is this is our FileMaker training app, right? Pretty cool. And you can come over here, you can select the video course. These are the current courses right here. If you come over here to the Pro course, you could actually scroll down and find that, or you could just do a search. Say we want to do a search for, we call it 3 engine, and hit the return key. And this is the video you'd want to watch on the Pro 19 course. It talks about how everything works with Draco, etc. It's really good training. So once again, that is the organized training as opposed to the kind of the schizophrenic, what would you call it? If someone said a free-form, yeah, training conversation. So another big tip on the WebDirect side. So one of the things that we do as a FileMaker developer, when you're in layout mode in FileMaker Pro, this is, a lot of times you need to layer an item or layer an object. And you can put, like in Pro, you could have an object underneath something. For example, you could have a field that you click on that's underneath, and then the field that you can't click on that's above it, so they are layered together. And so that works in Go, works in Pro. It's not supported on the browser. And so frequently, like you'll show a field on top that really shows the information you want them to see, but if they want to edit it, you want them to kind of activate the other button. And so the old way before we had script triggers was to kind of layer it. See, the field that you really wanted to get to was underneath, and the field they would see was on top. And if you clicked, the FileMaker Pro and Go kind of like see through that, and they go right down to where they can actually activate something. It's pretty, kind of a neat design aspect. It's almost like this layering conversation that goes on. The idea is that you can't do layering in WebDirect. It doesn't support that, so you have to think about solving the problem the other way. You cannot layer these things because when you click through, the web browser won't let you get through. That click will not register through the layers, even though they're invisible. So that's kind of how that kind of works. It's a difference. Script triggers, be thoughtful about script triggers because script triggers can, especially like when you do, for example, let me give you a really good example of this. Some of you will wonder about this. If I go back to the training that we have, this is common with Nick's training, the lean design training. Say we go over here, and the new version of the player 26, you don't have it yet, has the search up here, so you don't have to dig into find the search. But here's the search right here. I'm going to zoom in on this, okay? Now, what you can do with FileMaker is as you type, you can have it like do stuff. Every time you type the key, it can do stuff, right? Go places and do searches and stuff like that. It's kind of performance intensive, right? Because you're running a script every time you type something. So if I type like anchor buoy, A-N-C-H-O-R. Now notice that nothing's happening, right? Because you could have it like dynamically redrawing the screen for you, but the problem is you're putting a huge hit on performance on Pro or Go, and they can just about barely handle it most times. If it's a local file, it's okay. WebDirect is going to choke horribly because remember, every time you type this, right? Remember on Pro and Go, right? And so I'm kind of zooming back out here so you can find my smiling face. I'm waving my hands at you, but no one can see me. So if I zoom back in over here, every time you type a character here with WebDirect, it's going back to the server. And the server has to do something and bring it back. So every time you're typing, it's server, 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 talk, talk, talk. Remember we had the conversation yesterday, we were talking about latency, right? And people are like, what's latency and what's a packet, right? And so the idea is that as you type, this is your little packet of information, right? And so it's between you and the server, right? And so you type the letter, right? So you type an A, and then, right? This is going back and forth on the network, and then A. And so if it's just you, it's fine. But if you have 50 people using a solution on a server, right, and the server's not super beefy, then all these little packets of you typing and keystrokes like that and triggers, you're stressing the server. You don't need to. It makes the solution slower. So what we train people is type it, press the return key. So as you type, nothing happens on WebDirect until you hit the return key, right? And then once you hit the return key, it's going to go, do the search, update the layout, bring it back, right? Makes sense? So very important that you understand what packets are So now we're at battle stations. The server has crashed. So I look exceptionally sinister. The warp core is breaching, right? So there we go. So questions about WebDirect. So WebDirect, it works. It doesn't cost you any more or less than anything else. It does provide access on a browser if it's a modern supported browser, right? So test question that people ask, oh, it's HTML. Can we customize the HTML? No. The way you customize it is you go into FileMaker and you edit it over here, right? That's how you customize it, right? There's no HTML over here. Now, if you have a web viewer with HTML in that, now that does work in WebDirect, right? So yeah, so that will work just fine, but you can customize that. But if you like, oh, I want to put some HTML in here and style this and CSS and stuff, no. It's not designed for that at all. So there we go. Questions from the folks. I just moved that. See that update over there? See, I moved that quite by accident and I moved it. So that's how you update the material. You know, once again, it talks about WebDirects and the technology it uses, you know. I mean, how it works, I don't know that anyone cares about that, because as soon as you start mentioning, hey, it uses CSS, and it uses this, and it uses that, then people think they can edit this. They can't. So this is like, just disregard that. You don't need to know anything about that, okay? But this is a really great diagram. One of the things you can do if you're really heavy duty on WebDirect, if that's a problem, Dave, let me know, is that you can set up additional, what we call worker machines. And what they do is they give you additional capacity to process the WebDirect traffic. So you have one server and it has multiple WebDirect. It's kind of like a multi-server. It's a little bit kind of like, well, it's not really replication, but it's a way that we always said that server has a harder time dealing with WebDirect. It's about 3 times heavier approximately than Pro or Go. In order to compensate for that, FileMaker has a couple of installation options that you have right here, and you have these worker machines. So see this worker machine here? I can zoom in over here a little bit. You have a worker machine here, a worker machine here, right? And so that's fine. So yeah. So anyway, so that covers that part of this. If we scroll down here, you can see additional talk about. Once again, oh, here's an interesting thing here. Consistency and latency of, okay, so yesterday, really good. So one of you on yesterday, we were talking about latency in milliseconds. Remember that conversation? Claris officially says 150 milliseconds or less, okay? For FileMaker Pro or Go, if you're using starting point, you can, 100 or less is great for that. It will support probably 150 to 200. At some point, you'll start to notice it, especially if you're trying to run sorts, reports, things like that. But that's a really good number that you see right there, that rating. Now, we did some testing from Australia to the to our office here. Remember, we were doing those tests, and one of our awesome people there, who was up here somewhere, he was having the conversation. Was that up here, or was that somewhere else? Let me see. Oh, yeah, there he is right there. So it's NJ from Australia. So NJ, hopefully if he's here, he was getting consistently, you can see this on Discord, he was getting about 195 milliseconds. So this gets back to this whole idea that if you have a solution and you have users in Australia, right, then you need to make sure that your users are actually using a local server. You need a server that's on the same continent, right? That's that whole thing that's coming up to the end of July. We're doing enterprise replication with FileMaker, something that FileMaker can't do without a third-party tool to help them with it. So we're combining starting point, enterprise. There's this kind of slightly different version of a starting point where we use UUIDs instead. And we're combining that with 360 Works on the mirror sync. We're doing replication from continent to continent. It's going to be epic. Pretty awesome. So, question that David had, minimize these script triggers, would be careful with conditional formatting. Every time you do a calculation in your interface over here, every time you do a calculation over here, you're adding stress. And most of the time, like conditional formatting, all these things, the Pro or Go handle that locally. Right? But WebDirect, once again, is going back to server. So we're back to this idea of the packets whizzing back and forth. Once again, that's that latency conversation. So, so you want to minimize, the on-screen conditional formatting. For example, one of the techniques that Nick showed everyone. Holy cow! There I am. That's a little disconcerting. Hey, it's Richard. It even looks like I've been painted, which is even crazier. Holy cow. You only come to me when you have a that gets saved. Thank you very much. You did that. That was pretty awesome. Nick was talking about, so sorry, let me cover this before. I'm not going to look at, if I look at Discord, I'm going to be just distracted. Let me go to Pro. This is very, very important. So say, for example, that you want to see all these little like hidden objects here and hidden objects here and hidden object here. See this hidden object right here, this one right here, I think is this group right here, okay? And the idea what Nick would create is he would create a single slide panel, And if everything in that slide panel was really cool, what you do is you put everything in the slide panel, you make the slide panel invisible, but everything in there has that same like conditional formatting criteria or hidden criteria. So then you put it in the slide panel, Dave, and then you put the condition on the slide panel so FileMaker only evaluates it once, as opposed to, you know, like if you, all these would only show up if Ken is flying a balloon today, right? Ken's a balloon flight instructor, if there is such a thing as a flight instructor for balloons. I mean, air goes in, it goes up, you go down, crash into power lines, whatever happens. So if you did all that right here, and instead of doing conditional formatting here and here and here and here, that's like 12 or 15 calculations that could be replaced with one calculation. So lean design becomes very important. If Nick was here, he would say, you must use your lean design, because otherwise it will be an abomination. That's his words he uses, abomination. Right? Does WebDirect require previous VPN activation if the company is holding a VPN server? Okay, well, VPN is just like a network thing, right? So if the only way to get onto the network is with a VPN, I mean, it's just like it's a resource on the network, right? So if the server is off the network, I mean, it's not really a FileMaker thing as a general rule. If you put it on there, it should work. You should go through the VPN. Should be fine. That's Candido asking that question. Great one. What is the max WebDirect users before getting in trouble? So we had a webinar. We called it Cloud Melt Summary. Dude, there you go. If you're a video training person, you got to watch this video. So I told you about us trying to melt the server. This is it, baby, right here. So this is a summary of what we did. There was a more in-depth video, but
every week I hear from FileMaker users ask.
And so we talked about melting the server. We had all these connections in here. If I make it bigger, let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit. So you can see that we were loading it up with stuff, right? So we had here 256 connections, and we didn't have any problems with Pro. So in order to melt it, we had to transfer a bunch of people off of Pro and onto WebDirect, and then it still didn't have a problem. Then I said, well, everyone go to the contacts record, which has 15 million records, and do a sort. And then it went crash, right? It didn't crash, it just basically stopped being responsive. Most people assume that's a crash. It actually, if we left it alone after a little bit of time, it resuscitated itself, which was really surprising. I would assume it would just, Andre says, well, if depending upon the number of WebDirect users, you need to have so much RAM memory available to each one, right? That number started off at like 512, and then it's gone down. I can't tell you for 19 what it is. You might be able to find that over here in the documentation where we talk about the Claris documentation, WebDirect guide, but if we go to the Claris 19 document release notes over here. Once again, this is the stuff that Laura was working on. She's very talented, obviously. She works at Claris, and she wrote some of this stuff up. So but that number tends to change, and so I don't know the current number right now for that. But the more WebDirect people, so to give you an idea, with this upcoming event we're going to be doing Amazon. That's why I didn't look right. Amazon EC2. We're going to be setting up these virtual servers around the world, basically what we're going to be doing. And so what we want to do is do the instant types, right? So general purpose, memory optimized. Let me go back. Where's the instant types right here? So we're going to be looking at the M5 right here, which is a pretty high-end performance system. Right, so you're talking about a machine up here. I think we were looking at amount of virtual CPUs. We're looking at, I think, 32 CPUs and this kind of memory, or it was 4 extra large. I think was this one right here. Okay, and so this is where you start to think about servers like this when you have hundreds of people logging on, right? And so we're going to set one of these up in the United States, one in Europe. I think we're going to do India too, which will be interesting. If we can swing Australia, if we can swing 4, we'll do 4. But it'll be, Jesse is going to we're going to really put the screws to a mirror sync. Either it's going to go or not go. So here we go. One more thing about WebDirect. Size server, cache size reserved for FileMaker Server, not WebDirect. The more you allocate for a file, the less available. Yeah, so that gets back into conversation. So this is another good update. So we had if we go back to the broadcast conversation, so we did a 2-day setting up your FileMaker server and then a 1-day emergency crash restoration. And we had to kind of skim through that a little bit because to really learn about setting up your own Amazon server and really doing the backups and really understanding all that, you really have to, let me see, do I have the CMS over here? Oh, I do. You have to, it's not a 2-hour conversation, it's about a 5-hour, maybe a 6-hour conversation. So we are shooting that, reshooting that. So if I go over here to the train, this is where the live broadcasts are all set up. This data comes to you. I'm going to go show past events. I'm going to zoom in a little bit over here so we can see this. I'm going to scroll down. And then we had, there it is, that was a server crash restoration. And then we had day 1 and day 2 of the server configuration setup. So basically in there we talked about the maximum amount of RAM that you set. When you do a FileMaker server installation, it does this default setting that's really stupid, that really hurts the performance. You have to go and change it. You have to basically change it with a command line or some third-party tool. So the point is that normally you set it for about half of the available RAM on the computer. However, Andre's pointing out a really good point. The more RAM that you give it, for the FileMaker server, the FileMaker server is the Draco engine. That's not the WebDirect part of the operation. The WebDirect we talked about in that the processes that make FileMaker server run. So if I go back over here to, it says like one question that leads to another question. This stuff is all highly connected. If I go back to here, I connect to here. It's going to make me log in again. So if I go over here, and he was showing it to you on process by name, and I'll flip it the other way. If you come down here, so when you want to see FileMaker Server, when FileMaker Server is set up on Mac or Windows, it's not like one program. It's multiple programs. And so here is FileMaker Server right here, here. This is all FileMaker Server. So when you install FileMaker Server, you get all these apps right here, okay? And so normally what we're doing is the Draco engine is this right here. This is when you think of the FileMaker server, like managing the data and doing stuff, that's it. If you run a script with PSOS or SASE, that's that. You got the helper D, which is some log writing, some other stuff. And then Andre's about to chime in here with some more stuff. But the point is that if you allocate a ton of memory here to the server D, the WebDirect is mostly coming out of here, I believe. WIPD, I believe that's it. And so the idea is that you want to make sure that you leave memory for the WebDirect side. So these are really separate. They call them processes, but they're little programs that are running, and they're all communicating at high speed. So for those of you who can't really see that, there you go. So that when you install FileMaker Server on Mac or Windows, you're going to get a set of files that look a lot like that. Okay, and so the names might be slightly different, but generally not. And so if you give all the memory to one app over here in the memory config, then the one that runs WebDirect can't have enough memory or won't have enough memory. So you have to be thoughtful about that part of the conversation. Andre's having a pretty long conversation here. Server-side plugins, right? So once again, plugins. Yeah, so once again, you can use plugins if you're using, as a general, plugins don't work with Cloud 2. So if you're using FileMaker Cloud and you want to use plugins, on the server side, they're not supported. So that's a reason not to use Cloud 2, right? If you need server-side plugins, you need to use FileMaker Server. You need to have your IT folks set that up, or have someone from my team or someone else to help you set that up. Even Andre can help you set it up. He's saying that I have 30 databases that are using the MySQL DDL and the Monkey Bread plugin. If I take half of my 64 gigs on the server, my cache, my import speed will reduce by 50%. So he only sets, so you've got to play with the cache a little bit. That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. So he's saying that don't give, I mean, if you're using a bunch of like ODBC and ESS and a lot of WebDirect, you need to be thoughtful about how you set this number. He sets this number like at 2 gigs, which might be okay in your situation, but if you're using a lot of other technology, if you're only using Pro and Go for the most part, then set it for 50%, or it's about 45%. So that's pretty interesting. So that's a very technical conversation. If you want to know more about that technical conversation, I'm going to recommend that you check out the Claris technical documentation page, which is right here. Appreciate everyone. Have a good one. I'll see you on Monday.
And the guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected. The quarterback, great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap, stands in, throws it left for Amendola, reaches up and snags a high throw and lands inside the 10, rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.